Thanks for tuning back in again. In this video we're going to be having a look at some of these homemade mounts, for which I take no credit for, but excellent idea. I'll be discussing those in a bit more detail. So there's like a log one I made, that's got the Trias Orchid that we had delivered mounted on it. So we're going to have a chat about those. Also, in this video we're going to be removing one of the keikis from Dendrobium devonianum. This keiki here has got lots of fresh roots on it, so we're going to be taking that keiki off and mounting it on this mount, and we'll be discussing the potting media we put in there and how to remove it so it causes as little damage as possible. And we'll head inside and we'll have a little bit of discussion about the mounts, why I use them, their benefits, and then we'll pop this guy onto it. Okay, so we can have a little bit of a closer look up the keiki we're going to be taking off in today's video. This is Dendrobium devonianum, or Devon's Dendrobium. Produces the most interesting flowers. They look like little white Pokemon with sort of like orange and purple dots on the sepals of the flower. And the flowers emerge from last year's canes, so it flowers sort of annually. It's a great little orchid for me, super easy to care for. It is deciduous, so it drops its leaves as the temperature drops, and then starts a new growth next year. So this is what we're going to be working with today. Okay, so as promised, this is almost like a continuation video really, because a couple of weeks ago I sat down and I did a really in-depth video on these mounts, how they're made, their pros and cons, opposed to other types of mount or commonly used orchid mount. And then in the process of moving the files onto the computer, I managed to corrupt a couple of them, so you get halfway through the videos and I'd suddenly the video would freeze. I was gutted actually, because it was a really good little video. I was really happy with the way it came out. I was very relaxed. It was sort of like the conversation sort of naturally flowed. So I was pretty peed off actually about that. So this is a bit of a continuation, I suppose, in light of that video. So these are the little mounts that I've been using. These, I don't take no credit for these. These are my design. Another YouTuber, Brad from Brad's Greenhouse, did quite an in-depth video on how to make these, and I think he got the idea or the schematics, or basically how to make them from one of his friends or colleagues, so I don't think he takes any direct credit. But I thought they were a really good idea, because I was hunting around. I used big square pieces of cork bark. I buy it in bulk from Amazon and use that for mounting orchids on. I really like the way it makes an orchid appear when it's mounted against the woody texture. You know, that's how they would be. Well, most of them, the epiphytic ones anyway, would naturally grow in the wild anyway. So I think that looks really good. It really shows a stark contrast between the background and the plant which will grow, and it just looks more natural. The downside with them obviously is it's hard to come by decent cork. It can be quite expensive. I went into a local reptile shop and was pretty disappointed with the cost of cork. Even the small pieces, these pieces were like 30 centimetres, and they were going for something like 20 quid, and I just think that was far too excessive for what is, for intents purposes, a lump of cambium off of a tree. So one of the downsides, well, what do we know about cork bark? Cork bark's good. It does have a habit of absorbing a lot of excess salts from the fertiliser. It also dries out very quickly. So these are a couple of downsides, and the upside is it looks really good, and it is widely used. The other type of well, quite commonly used mounting media for orchids was obviously tree fern, or New Zealand tree fern, which again, it has got some pros and cons. It looks really good. It absorbs moisture. It takes a long time to break down. But obviously there's the ethical side of that, because obviously that's being harvested, a lot of it's being harvested from the wild. It takes so long for them to grow to the size of which they're harvested from, so obviously there's an ecological impact from using those. These mounts, these ones here I'm going to talk about, don't use any of this, all man-made materials, so that's quite, it has its pros and cons as well as pollution, yada yada yada, but at least it's not removing species directly from or damaging an ecosystem when it will be, but in a more roundabout convoluted way. So another possibility, looking at man-made fibres, is EpiWeb. This is I have mentioned it in some of my previous videos. This is another little Stelis orchid on here. This man-made fibre, this spun mat basically, which is incredibly hygroscopic, so it attracts and holds water. I mean, you can see this is dripping water out over the table as we speak. Great to use, super lightweight, quite expensive, but I think it looks pretty good. It's just like a great big piece of carpet, really, like a foam tile, but it's very easy to work with, so it's very easy to mount an orchid on it and then just stitch it on with a needle and thread, and just stitch it on there, and it retains a lot of moisture through the day. I think these are going to become really popular. We're going to see a lot more of these as they come down in price. I got a few bits just to experiment with and find it really satisfactory. The orchid soon buries its roots inside the surface of the mount in search of water. And they're also reusable. You can wash them away. They never degrade, so you can just, if the orchid dies or you want to take an orchid off of it, I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to take an orchid off of it, you can wash them out and reuse them. So they're really, really good. Like I said, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that in future. So back to these mounts. These are the ones I've made. They're simply made out of gutter guard. This is what this mesh material is. So this is what you would put across your gutter to stop leaves and detritus from falling in. Sort of cut them to shape. Then what's this in here? This is actually a material made of pond filter. I picked this up from an aquarium specialist near me. It wasn't particularly expensive. Got a great big square of it, I think, for about £10. And then this is basically cut to shape and then glued into place using just a household glue gun. And this is what we're going to be mounting our orchid onto today. What I really like about this is basically, you could, whatever your imagination can make or can come up with, you could make a mount feasibly in that shape. So, but for this one here, this Trias orchid that we had delivered, I did a video on this. What I've done is, instead of making like a flat parcel, as it were, I've actually tried to simulate like a branch or a log. So what I've done is I've made a circular mount and just glued the two ends together with another piece of foam in the middle. And stuffed it full of a potting media. This was actually part of the previous video. I spoke about this in quite some depth, and then sewed it on for the camera as well. It was a really, really good video, so sort of trying to come to terms with the loss of that. So he's on there now, sewn on there. A little bit of sphagnum moss. This is filled full of small grade or fine grade orchid bark, some perlite, and some sphagnum moss, just milled up gently in one of the bowls and just tamped down with I think I use a chopstick in this instance, just to make sure the media really filled the whole of the mount up. And then I just glued a hook on the back of it, and that just hangs up on the wall inside the greenhouse. So yeah, super happy with that. Seems to work really, really well. Orchid's doing brilliantly. So those are the mounts. And we're going to be using this mount to mount our Orchid keiki on, or our Dendrobium keiki, which is just hanging up over here. What I'll do is I'll pick it up, bring it over, get a few more bits, so I'll go and get my cell maker's needles so we're ready to sew this on, and bring you in a bit closer to watch the process. Okay, so hopefully you can see everything okay here. Probably not my head, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So this is the potting media we're going to be using. We've just got some perlite, some the fine grade orchid bark, and some sphagnum moss. This needs cutting up a little bit more. There's some dry stuff in here from a little while ago. Any excess media I just tend to pump, or just tend to drop it into a bag. It sits in there for next time. So I've got like some media or some soil which is good for nepenthes already mixed up. Got some which I use for cephalotus, which is already, and I've got some orchid media and varying different types, sort of all mixed up as and when I need it, sort of thing. So it's good, just a little bit of a mix up. So there's quite a lot of sphagnum moss in here because I want it to be. The beauty about these is if you can put sphagnum moss in them to such a degree that you can really sort of alter how much moisture retention the mat actually provides, which is why which I think they're so good. So you can, they're interchangeable. Also, you can actually, in theory, change the media by being very careful around the roots. If you use a set of these long-handled, what are they? Tweezers. You can actually pull some of the media out and change some of it, or change half of it, which is quite a cool thing to do. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this and just simply fill it up until it's sort of nice and plump. Just squeeze it gently like that, and just put the media in, tamp it down so it becomes nice and stiff. Like that. They're quite strong. The glue's fantastic. It really holds the sides together quite well, so you can be quite rough with them without fear of them breaking. Lots of air movement as well from these, because obviously it's double sized, not like a piece of bark where one side of it's just wood basically. This side, this way you've got air movement from both sides of it, which I think is really, really good. What I'm going to do is just go and get a bit more sphagnum moss, and then we'll come back to that. I know some people sort of shy away from using sphagnum moss. It can, because obviously it holds so much water, it can encourage rot. It can hold on to salts and excess nitrates and stuff, which can be bad for your orchids. But if used correctly, or given a little bit of respect, I find I'm sort of moving more and more towards using it as a predominant feature in all of my potting medias, just because the moisture retention is so good. I find the orchids really enjoy it. Anyway, they grow in moss, obviously not sphagnum moss, but something very close to it. In the wild anyway, so, and they seem to respond very well to it. So let's continue filling this up. Just give it a little squash, make sure everything's fitting in there nicely. It does pack down a lot though, so you've got to be, obviously I'm sort of running out of media here. By the time that's squashed up, that will be about right. So there we go, that's the mount filled now. You can see we've already got this porous surface, so I'm going to be able to stitch the actual keiki on there quite nicely. We'll just stick him straight in the middle, so he's got the bigger surface area to spread his roots through. Pop that out of the way for now, and now we can have a look at the keiki. So, what I've actually been doing over the last sort of few weeks is I've actually been, every time I've gone past it, I've just been tweaking the roots slightly, just to stop them from adhering too much to the parent stem, because otherwise it's just almost impossible to move it. So that all of these here are actually detached, they're just sort of floating in thin air really. So I've been told there's one of two ways of doing this. One way you can sort of like just pull it off of the stem, and that's supposed to do very little damage to the actual plant at all. I'm not sure about that, it sort of freaks me out a little bit. This is one of the older canes that is spent now. It will be being used as a food and energy storage facility, basically, for the plants. Although this year it is still growing, but it's got another pseudobulb here which it can rely on. So I'm not sure whether or not I'm actually going to be inclined to actually cut this little section off. Because it's going to actually make it easier as well to attach it to the new mount. So what I'll do first is we'll try just gently prying it off of this stem, and if that doesn't work, we're going to cut it off. Okay, so Right, it's coming off, just gently. Okay. What I don't want to do is snap or damage any of the roots. So I really want to be careful. It's just about to come away. There we go. That's that root there, stuff on there. Nearly got all the roots off. Okay, so there we go. Here's our keiki. Let's see if we can see how much wounding that's made a tiny section of damage on the mother plant. I'm just going to get up and stick them over here out of the way. There we go. What I'll do now is I'll bring you in a bit closer so we can have a bit more of an inspection. You can see what we've been left with. Okay, so here's the keiki we're left with. Here are all the nice roots, lots of new growth on the ends of them. It's obviously pretty keen on getting up and away, and we're going to mount it like this. So this will be the face of the mount. I don't know if I'll hold it a bit closer to you. Hopefully you'll be able to see. I've turned autofocus off, otherwise it just focuses in and out all the time. So this is what we've got left. Focusing again. Come on, phone. There we go. So you can see the small piece of detached. That's where it was attached to the stem in there, and that's all we've got. The phone does not want to focus on you today. So anyhow, plenty of roots. We're going to be mounting it like this on the face of the mount, and I'm just going to sew it on with some fine fishing line at the moment. So what is, I'll go ahead and set that up, and then we can sew it on. Okay, so for the purpose of this, I'm just using ordinary fishing line. This is not particularly strong. This is about 8 pound fishing line. No, it's not. 15 pound fishing line. So it's pretty clear. It's not too obtrusive. I have actually turned autofocus back on the camera just for the purposes of this, because I'm going to be moving my hands around a lot. I want to get the best possible picture. Unfortunately, the quality of this camera in low light is absolutely shocking. One day I will be able to afford some decent recording equipment, and it's going to make me an extremely happy man. But at the moment, needs must. So I'm afraid it's relegation to the camera at the moment on the phone. Right, so just tie a simple knot on this, just so we can put it backwards and forwards without it coming undone. Like that. And on this end, what I'm going to tie is just a simple loop. Just pinch the two ends together, like that. Take a bite in the middle, tuck the loop back through itself. Just a simple loop like that. And we don't want the end sticking out, so we'll just nick that back. I've got my glasses on. There we go. Lovely. So now we need the mount, the orchid, and the means of attaching it, which will be, in this instance, needle and thread. Hook that over there for the moment. Hopefully you can see that relatively well. Excellent. Right, and what we're going to do is I'm going to mount him literally, spraying the roots out like that on the middle of the mount, and then we'll sew them on. So, out of the way for a minute. That's the beauty about these. Oh, all the stuff's going to come out the other end. I hadn't thought of that. It's tricky doing this and filming it at the same time, I must admit. So what we want to do is get him mounted on there, like that. What I want to do is just try and hold him in place. Grab the needle and thread. And we're just going to pass it. These are cell making needles, they're pretty big. I used to do a bit of splicing of ropes and stuff, so they should be long enough to get through. Oh yeah, just for the end of it. There we go. So put a deal of it through this way. So we've got the loop just here. I'll use my chest to lean in here so we can get close to it. And then just pass the needle back through, trying to be careful not to damage the orchid in any way. That's just coming out by my finger. Alright. There it is. Just going to put my thumb on the roots. Got him. Right, so there we go. And we're just going to pass that back through the loop. Like I said, try and do this on camera is nigh on impossible. I'm going to use my skin there as a gravitational fulcrum to keep purchase on the needle. What I'm going to do is just pull the loop so it disappears almost back into the potting media there. I don't know if you can see that. Like that. Come back over this way. Like that. And then we're ready to pass it back through again. It won't need too much, just a couple of turns on here. Just to keep it in position. So I'm probably skewing the view with my fingers there. I'm not going to put any extra sphagnum moss on here, I just don't think it's going to be necessary. Oh, only just about feel it this time. Yep, got it. Excellent. Just got to make sure the loop doesn't go over any of the roots too much. There we go. And we can always cut this off again afterwards. Or if we see that it's starting to restrict the growth of the orchid. So I mean that's quite firmly on there now. Don't think we need to make it any tighter than what it is. Just going to put it a little bit tighter like that. And what I'm going to do is take a bite at the back. So just simply passing the needle in and out of one of the pieces of webbing, like that. Hit the needle back off again. There we go. Let's give it an extra little pull, make sure it stays tight. And then we're just going to pass the needle back through the loop a few times to make a series of half hitches, like this. Ooh. Like that, one more on there. Stick it in my thumb too many times. Really need to remember to bring my glasses home from work. That's going to save a lot of blood, sweat and tears. Right, and there we have it. So that's all knotted off on the back now. You can just snip that off. We don't need that on there now. And there we go. There's the orchid mounted on the front of the pad. I splayed the roots out nicely on there as well, and that's only taken a couple of turns with the fishing line to hold it on there. I've got these hooks mounted on the back so it will just hang over my over the mounting wall. It should be quite comfortable. So there we go. Not entirely sure how this video has come out. There was a lot of faffing around with the needle, but hopefully you guys have seen that. We've spoken a bit about the different types of mount that I use, these homemade mounts, and how good they are. And you've seen us take off a little keiki on one of my Dendrobiums. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I promise one day to have better recording equipment. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a like. And if you feel like it, subscribe.